Hey, this is Corey. Hey, do you feel stuck? Are you lacking confidence or maybe even lacking consistency? I'm excited to tell you about a new program that I am rolling out. It covers the four main areas of your life: you, marriage, parenting, and work. The reason I developed this program is because so often in my one-on-one coaching, I find myself repeating the same stuff over and over. And so what I wanted to do is put together a group program that includes video, group calls, some community. So it gives more access to more people who are stuck, whether they're stuck in their personal life or their professional life. And so I'm excited to launch this out. It comes out on June 7th. You can sign up now. Go to CoreyMCarlson.com/leadership. And from there, you'll get all the details on the program, what's included, what you'll get out of it, all the benefits and features. So go to CoreyMCarlson.com/leadership to learn more about this program called The Confident and Consistent Leader. Now on to today's episode.
Welcome to the Win at Home First podcast. I'm your host, Corey Carlson. This podcast is where we talk about how successful business leaders win, not only at work, but also at home. On this podcast, we'll go behind the scenes with great leaders to hear stories of how they win. Thank you for listening, and on to today's episode.
Hello, this is Corey. You're listening to Win at Home First podcast. Today is to have a fun guest, Justin Ricklefs, who go all the way back to high school, where I first met him, and then to watch him grow in his career. He worked for the Kansas City Chiefs for a long time, and then he also launched his own business, Guild Content, is what he does now. And he also has 5 kids. He's married. He is just busy in all areas in his life, but yet having success. And so I want to bring him on the podcast today. So Justin, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, are you kidding me, man? Thank you for yours. It's good to be with you, and certainly a pleasure to share and chat with your audience for sure. Yeah, man, this goes back to the Oak Park Northman days, my man. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah, that's right. And neither one of us thought we'd be doing what we do now. We didn't get degrees in this.
I didn't know
stuff.
This existed.
Yeah, exactly. So Justin, what is a key trait that leaders need to have in order to win at work and win at home?
What a question, man! You wrote the book, so you know the actual answers. But for me, the ways that I'm learning really about the emotional intelligence, which frankly is a challenge for me, and my brainwaves would show that. And I was telling Brooke this week, I had starting some very early neurofeedback work, which is interesting, and again, an area I didn't know existed, but. Anyway, long and short, my brain waves left to right don't talk very well. So like there's just, for me, and it's the story kind of even of how things got off the rails and sideways in my own personal life, but a few years back, is the emotional intelligence piece and the awareness, I think both self and the awareness of what's really going on from a culture perspective with your team, with your family. And again, I'm wading into these waters right now as a 40-year-old, right? Like trying to figure all this stuff out. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of practical pieces too, but I'd say in that realm around emotional intelligence, vulnerability, having the bravery to be honest and authentic. I think that's where, really strong and contagious and captivating leadership exists, is in that vein. And again, man, I'm a rookie here, but those waters, I think, are some of those answers for sure.
Mm-hmm. So how are you growing in emotional intelligence?
Great question. I mean, honestly, there's parts of it that are more academic and head in knowledge, right? So in terms of books and practices around habit formation, daily practice and meditation, some of those pieces. And again, I think for me, some of the struggle is translating the head knowledge. And I know you're an Enneagram fan, but as a 7 on the Enneagram, head is kind of where you live, right? Like for me to think about the future, to plan for the future, to be excited about the future comes really easy and naturally. Matthew McConaughey's book, I don't know if you've read it yet, but he talks about the Autobahn between the head and the heart. And that language really resonates, because for me, it is sometimes too big of an Autobahn, right? Like it's too big of a gap between the head and the heart. So I think to integrate those, and to answer your question directly, I think, people around, having a wife who's very intuitive and discerning and can spot the BS in me or the ways that I stay in my head. To have a team, we've kind of soaked this language into the culture and fabric of our team around, and everyone has taken an Enneagram assessment, so we kind of have some common language there. And I think it's just bumps and bruises. I think it's the continued conversation, the continued ownership, the continued practice of trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes, trying to see someone else's perspective, trying to be self-aware, and then, raising your hand going, hey, I blew it. I didn't do it well this time. Will you forgive me? And let's try again. So I think in those veins are kind of where, at least for me personally as a leader, trying to figure out how all that comes to life and is done in somewhat of a consistent and healthy way.
Yeah, I've not read Green Lights, Matthew McConaughey's book yet. But one thing on that head to heart, I had a mentor say, it's only 18 inches apart from your head to your heart, but it's the hardest 18 inches to travel. And that's always been so impactful to me. You talk about having the humility to raise your hand and say, hey, I messed up, I screwed up. Do you find that more difficult to do at work or at home?
Man, 3 or 4 years ago version of me would probably have said at home. I think that today version of me is a little more balanced and not making the mistake, right? To be clear, but the quickness to have the awareness to raise my hand, I'd say is become more balanced. Apologies at work are weird, right? Like they're not common. You don't see them a lot. There's typically lots of posturing or defending or convincing or excuse making or whatever. But even in an interview we had with a candidate today, she was quick to kind of say, hey, when someone on the team messes up, it's my responsibility to own it to the client. It's my responsibility to kind of raise my hand. And so I think, again, those are the traits that signify it's actually strength, right? To be able to admit and show the vulnerable parts that are like, didn't quite have it all together there, because that's human, that's real. And I think the opposite, when I'm in my unhealthy places of either convincing or defending or protecting something, it's because I'm scared or I'm afraid to admit that I kind of blew it, right? So, yeah, I mean, to get back to your question, I think for me, that journey has become a little quicker in both areas of my life, but certainly, personally kind of hurts worse to have to tell your 17-year-old daughter or your wife or someone that shares your last name that you screwed up. But yeah.
I find it so much easier in the long term, though, once we say, hey, we're sorry, we screwed up. I mean, there was a point where I would be too prideful and say, I'm not going to cave in, not going to follow my sword. And it'd drag on for days. And now it's just like, you know what? It's also just more efficient. Not only is it the right thing to do, it's a more honorable thing, but man, it's a lot more efficient. We can get back to being the fun family if I just say, all right, I screwed up, I'm sorry.
Totally. And there's so much good language around this, but one that's helped me, there's an author, her name's Byron Katie, and she has this brilliant quote, at least I liked it, that she said, hey, do you want to be right or do you want to be free? and it's such a profound, like, am I going to like really dig in and let my ego try to tell everybody that I'm right? Or is it worth just saying, hey, you know what? Like, I don't see it the same way, but here's how I kind of contributed to the mess, and I'm sorry, and let's move through. But yeah, you're right. It's also more efficient.
Well, that's the Enneagram 3 and me. Talk about you being a 7, I'm a 3. I just want to get stuff done and get moving. Yeah, no, so that's good. And for you, Enneagram 7, one of the things when I work with Enneagram 7s, talk with them, it's running from pain. And so often it is, I want to go do this or I want to go do that, because it's running from the pain, is not sitting in your feelings, not sitting in your heart type mode that you just mentioned. And it's the off to the running. So do you find yourself running from pain, running from the heart, running from the feelings?
Yeah, man, it's hardwired in there. It really is. And that's not an excuse. I think it's the reality for me is that, and I've talked about this before. in other contexts. But, I tried to outrun, I really did, like subconsciously tried to outrun my feelings for a long time, and wore the masks of success, promotion, cool job, cool family, pretty wife, 5 kids. I didn't know that I was doing that, like, logically, right? But the current underneath was trying to outrun the pain. And for me, the pain was dialed all the way back to, early formation, or family of origin stuff, where there's lots of trauma there. And I sprinted as fast as I could to outrun that stuff. And it hunted me down, man. And literally, almost took me down, because I was so oblivious to it. And, so through again, a really profound and loving and faithful wife, through therapy, through great friends, through just my own work, starting to recognize those instincts of how quickly I want to hit the eject button when something's painful. As easy as like I don't want to let the lawn mowing service guy down, that we're going to make a switch, right? All the way up to the real meaningful stuff. I mean, that instinct to avoid and try to outrun the pain is real, man. And what's interesting, and I say this now out loud every morning, the pain is actually a welcome gift. Like, it actually is where it's a blessing, right? Like, it's a precious gift, because in the pain is where you find intimacy. It's where you find growth. It's where you push through things. And so to outrun it or to try to avoid it is actually, it's actually a disservice to growth.
You made comments a couple different times about a few years ago, and it caught up to you. What did that look like in your life?
Yeah, man. We share some similar paths in the past. For me, the ways that I'll just say it this way, the ways that my dysfunction was compartmentalized. I was shoving places of my soul into corners that I was hopeful no one would ever see, and lived a very compartmentalized and disintegrated life, right? And specifically how that played out was at work, having an identity, at home, having an identity, at church, being a certain person, at the bar, being a certain person, right? And those, I say this lovingly, like, those charades caught up to me and manifested itself in ways that were, it sucks to say it out loud, but like, there were areas of my life I was hiding from my wife. There were areas of my life I was lying to myself and to others about. There were warning signs all over the place that I was smiling and trying to outrun. And so it caught me actually the same year my dad had open heart surgery for a clogged, major 97% clogged artery. And proverbially, like, that's the same year I had my kind of open heart surgery of like, hey man, there's a better way. There's a more whole way. There's a way that you can live with authenticity and honesty. And I remember sitting actually in my therapist's office, and I was shaming the hell out of myself, right? I was like, hey, I'm 36 years old and I'm just now learning how to tell the truth. And he was so gracious and gentle. And he was like, hey man, there's 76-year-old guys sitting in this couch that are just learning how to tell the truth. Mm-hmm. And so like at its, there are lots of like practical ways, I kind of betrayed trust and hurt people around me, including myself. But yeah, those are the themes, man. Like, the themes were this really kind of compartmentalized and segmented identity that was, again, back to your question, all designed with the intent to outrun pain, as opposed to knowing like, hey, this pain is not going to kill me. Like, I don't have to outrun it. It's actually okay. Hard lessons, easier to say 5 years later, but in the moment was certainly very dismantling and unsettling.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. What are you doing now, Justin, to live an integrated life versus having it compartmentalized, as you said you did for a while? What does integration look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think at its like most basic core, it's a freeing way to live with no secrets, right? Like to have, for me and my personal kind of journey here of like, there's nothing hidden. Like there's no conversation I would be afraid of someone listening to. There's no emails I'm afraid of someone reading. There's no text messages I'm deleting. Like the integration is kind of this, the pandemic did that to us, like in a macro level, right? Where all of a sudden work and life and home and marriage and parenting and teaching all like became one blended mess. Like, I think that's actually more human, is like we're all on this journey towards like finding our own true self. And that true self is the same individual or human at like the soccer field or the boardroom or the bathroom as you're getting ready for the day.
Yeah.
And so for, again, practice wise, like just, I hate to quote Matthew McConaughey all day long, like he's my buddy, because he's not.
You got a man crush on him, man.
but it's that Autobahn, it's that 18-inch gap between the head and the heart of like, that's where the integration, it starts to soak in, and bro, like I got a long way to go in that journey, but that is the journey. I think
it is the journey. And I too, continue to grow and get better. And I mean, obviously all of us do, right? It's as Paul talks about in 2 Corinthians, we're all growing closer to God 1 degree at a time. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're doing. And I like how your therapist made that comment about you sitting there versus a 76-year-old. And what I do for a living, I'll get executives at all different ages and parts of their career, and they just open up to the stuff that they're battling with. And so much of it is all similar. I'll have guys all the time on our coaching call say, man, I'm probably the only one telling you this, aren't I? Or this is, you never, and I'm like, no, I hear this all the time. And so my encouragement to you and just to others that I talk with is a lot of those painful mistakes that we made, it's got to release them. They're not tied to our identity. And that was a big problem I had for a long time, is I just figured I could never be a good husband because I did this. I could never be a business owner, a successful business owner, because I almost filed bankruptcy. And so it just became this point of, it held me back. But the freedom not only was admitting the pain, it was confronting the pain and then just moving forward with it. And so to release it, there's such power there.
Yeah, man, you're so right. It's so true. And it's so deep because, on one hand, it's like, yep, we're wonderfully made, we're unique and we're individual identity type folks. Right. But on the other hand, it's like, we're not special snowflakes. Like your guy who just said that, and I mean that in a loving way of like, the things I'm experiencing, if I'm holding them in and close, I may think it's like this super weird, unique thing. It's like nobody else has experienced it, so I have to like protect it, and I'm ashamed of it, right? But to live open in it and to admit it, then you find the harmony in the community of people who are like, oh yeah, for real, me too. And oh yeah, I went through that. Or I know a guy who went through that, or I'm struggling with that too. And whatever the case might be, I think there's such value in that connection, but the withholding of it prevents that connection. And again, learning these lessons in real time, right? But I think that's where that trust and that connection gets built, is when someone has the bravery to be open and say, hey, I have an issue here. Like,
yeah, there's a moment in my story where God told me to hand over my story for a greater story. And for me, the story I was holding on to is keeping, the affair in private and not wanting to come clean of it. And when I did, not only to Holly, I mean, I talk about this a lot in the book and other things. So, I mean, it obviously wasn't easy, but we made through. But the other part of that, what God was getting to in that was, not only did it improve Holly's and my marriage, and I'm already talking to my kids about things like that, but all the leaders I've talked to since that day where I came clean, because now it's like an open book. It's vulnerability but helping people get there. And so many people, I think if I would have never shared that story, well, one, I'd probably still be in corporate America. But the other is, even if I was to get in coaching somehow, some way, man, it'd be so much more veneer and, trying to look like I had all my, crap together, as opposed to just being honest and open with everybody. When you do that, man, that's when real breakthrough can happen.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. And what's profound, Corey, the 10-year ago version of you, and you use the word, I'm not picking on you, but like the veneer version of that looked cool, looked shiny, looked neat. but probably lacked the approachability and the honesty of like, don't know if I really trust that guy. Now it's like you lead with, hey man, like read the book. All the mess is in there. And the paradox of it all is it's actually so much more attractive, right? It's so much more trust building and inviting, because in your struggle, we can all resonate with our own. And that's the great paradox of all this, is the authenticity is actually the gateway into something deeper.
Yeah. And which is true for every single leader out there. Man, they're just more open, more vulnerable, and their team will want to follow them more because they are that much more engaging and empathetic and all that good stuff. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode. I hope you are enjoying it so far. Before we go back to the rest of this episode, I wanted to share with you my book, Win at Home First. Some of you have read it, so thank you very much. For others of you, you have not. And I encourage, if you're looking for a resource to help you with these times of your work is now in your home and your home is now in your work, and what this looks like, this book is being helpful to many leaders like you. Forbes magazine said it was one of 7 books everyone on your team should read. And the book is broken up into 4 different sections to help you. First is about you, understand who you are. The second is marriage and ideas and tips to help with your marriage. Third is parenting. And then last is work. So these 4 different sections to help you recalibrate during this time and to help move forward. So if you are needing additional resources, I encourage you to check out my book, Win at Home First. It is available on Amazon as well as Audible. And so on to the rest of the episode. Thank you very much. We also mentioned identity along the way, Justin. And man, you had a cool job with the Chiefs. And then obviously now you're a business owner and running a company. How have you been with your identity now, not taken to the business owner?
Man, it's hard. I've got like this ongoing kind of chicken scratch list of blog posts and things I want to like share and write about. And one of them is that it's you are not your identity. Your job is not your identity. And it's really like all writing for me is like therapy for myself. And hopefully it's hopeful for someone else too. But that specific topic is very real to me, because that was kind of like, oh, you work for Mizzou, you work for the University of Memphis, you work for the Chiefs, and it was hard to show up at the bus stop and not be like the guy who, man, Camden's dad works for the Chiefs. That's pretty cool. And I legitimately like played the like, oh shucks, kind of humble card. And inside I'm like, damn right I am, and that was a disease, man. Like and it's not their fault. It was my own. They didn't do that. They didn't ask me for that. When the identity got wrapped around my heart and my soul and became something that tethered me to something that ultimately couldn't give what I was asking it to give, it became pretty difficult to unwind. And so, my journey now, same thing, like even 4 years now into this journey of running this agency, or sometimes it running me, I might need a coach, right?
I know a guy.
The reality is, like, let me say it this way. I think the temptation is to attach identity to something that feels like significance, right? Like work or marriage or family or whatever. But all of it is really just a signpost to like a truer and deeper identity. And so it's hard. Like even a therapist, my counselor a couple months ago said to me, he's like, hey, what if you operated from joy? What would it look like for you to not be tied to the success or failure of this company, but what if you pursued what you were meant to pursue? And it's like it sounds okay it's awesome to hear that when you're on a couch, right? It's a little bit trickier when the bullets are flying in real life, but it is. I think that is the journey of like truer and deeper identity. Where am I looking now for something of short-term significance to give me something that it won't ever be able to provide. Like, and again, I'm a junkie on some of that stuff in a bad way. Like I want to attach to these other places that ultimately can't deliver. And so, yeah, man, that's a journey. It's a journey, but one that I think we all need to listen to, of your counsel of, hey, you're not tied. Your identity is not based on whether you made $1 million or $1 this year. Your identity is given to you in a much deeper way. So that for me all comes back to like, do I really believe that I'm God's son? Like, do I really believe it? Do I really let that Jesus identity soak in, or do I let the, outside stuff try to give me my identity? Because it never can, even as many times as I look for it to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we get that dopamine hit at the bus stop or wherever it may be when they call you out as a employee for the Chiefs. But yeah, those temporary identities, I mean, they don't last long, and they're not there in times of pain for sure. And that is when that beloved son or beloved daughter,
yeah, that's right,
is helpful. One thing as you mentioned, your therapist talking about the joy. I know one thing that I've had success in my own life and then working with other people to do is not everyone has to leave their job to go have joy. Sometimes it's just a mindset shift of what are you doing with that job? Maybe it's being intentional with those that you lead, or that you're intentional with your customers, and finding joy in what you're doing. Because not everyone is called to always leave. And this is part of your Enneagram 7. You can't always just go leave, go do this, go do that.
Darn it.
Sometimes the joy is right there. It's just doing it differently. And it's using maybe that calling that God has for you, and just seeing it through that lens, as opposed to this is just a job, 8 to 5. Let's go.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And I think the when that truth sinks in, you've got the ability to be the best. We work with a plumbing client. Like, you can be the best plumber, you could be the best banker, you could be the best executive, you could be the best teacher. When it's not like this, I'm looking for it to give me something that it never can give. Mm-hmm. But if it's in the right perspective, in the right place, it actually frees you to then go be you in those places, wherever those might be, to find kind of the deeper calling, the more intentional purpose. You don't have to start a company to find that. In fact, maybe don't. It's really a terrifying journey, right? But I think you're spot on. Like, if you can reframe some of that perspective and the identity, what one practical phrase that I kind of like to hold on to these little nuggets, but one that always hits me every time is, operate from love, not for love. Like, when I'm starting to operate for someone's approval, for someone's affection, for the applause, man, I get funky pretty quick. When I'm operating from love, like, man, I could, cook dinner or lead a board meeting. Like, those two extremes, like, are both from a place of love, not like me looking for someone else to tell me I'm okay, so.
Yeah, we have some similarities for sure. The rally cry I've been using for really probably the last decade, when I first learned it, was work from a place of approval as opposed to for approval. And totally, we work from a place of approval because we are beloved sons and or beloved daughters. And therefore we can work from a place of approval, as opposed to what I used to do, is always striving for it, whether it was from working really hard and my accomplishments, my achievements, or is through little approval of, I hope this person thinks I'm cool, or they think I'm the best employee or best husband, or whatever it may be, putting that temporary identity around that. So.
That's right. And for me, at least, the struggle is like knowing when I'm tending back towards those times, right? Like, it's, for me at least, not as black and white as like, man, I'm now operating out of from love all the time. It's like, oh shoot, there I am. Like, there he is again, like chasing the approval or chasing the dopamine hit of somebody else telling him he's okay, versus like, yeah, just keep coming back. Come back to true love. Come back to true identity. Come back to that deep foundation, which is, for me, pretty tricky.
Well, it's fun talking identity. I was not planning on talking about it that long, but it's just good. You get a lot of good insight ideas. One thing I always find, fascinating is business owners who have lots of kids, and you have 5 and a wife. How do you lead well at home? You guys have different predictable patterns or anchors you put throughout the week, or things that kind of bring the Ricklefs back around the table. And
it's such a great question, man. And I could enjoy help here, because again, it's just hard. It's hard when kids are going a million different directions, and business isn't quite as like 8 to 5 and predictable. One theme I'm trying to employ here is like harmony over balance. Balance is tough, because some nights it's like last night we had a video shoot that went till 8:30, right? And I was gone late. And so finding times that are frankly, like as simple and silly as this sounds, like screen free, like can we have 20 minutes where the phones are in a different place and we can play a round of poker together, or, something that just, centers the thing a little bit. And yeah, we've got, 17-year-old thinking about college, and all the way down to a 9-year-old who is in third grade. And so Brooke does such a great job of like being in tune and in touch with the emotional kind of rhythm of what's going on. And so for me personally, trying to like get into that river with her as deep as I can, and find some anchors where we can hold on to. For us, like getting away is good. We just went to Florida for spring break, and it was just this kind of nice reset. Not that it fixed everything by any means. Like there's plenty of drama on vacation too, but just finding like little ways to get to be together. And gosh darn, like I'm probably screwing up more than I'm getting right. But I think that intentional effort to connect, intentionally trying to get away from devices in particular, is a huge centering moment for us, at least.
Yeah. Do you guys have a family mantra or vision that you guys use?
Man, you mentioned that your friend that you met at the airport who wrote the one word book. We did that one year. Frankly, man, like I haven't given and that's one of my counselor's challenges to me. Is like, hey, be as creative with your family as you are at your work. And it's hard because it's like, oh man, it's easier to, brainstorm a video project idea for a client than it is to like create a schedule for home, right? So the raw answer is like, no, we don't. We need one. I mean, there's some guiding kind of core stuff that we believe and we're about, but yeah, we're in the middle of this interesting season with 3 teenage daughters and 1 son, and then a girl bringing up the rear. So I need some help there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I do know you are so creative, and not to pile onto the identity you may have had in writing, but that's how I kind of found you again, if you will, is obviously our paths went different directions. But man, a few years ago, whenever it was, you had a blog or a writing that, did pretty darn well. I mean, had a whole bunch of likes, and I found it and started reading, and therefore it kind of followed you. And then now here we are. So yeah, that creativity and applying that to your home life, I think that's a fantastic idea. I always find it so interesting, and you're not alone in that, but how many things that we require at work that we allow to slip at home. So at work, hey, what's our vision? What's our values? And I want to make sure I have one-on-one meetings with all my direct reports. And we've got to have a monthly meeting. And we're also once a quarter, we're going to have a strategic meeting. Like all these work things that we do. And then come home, it's like, oh, let's just wing it. Let's just hope we can get through it that way. And that is one of the things that we used to wing it for sure. And then it was like, no more. And instead got intentional and really spend time with, hey, what are the predictable patterns, and help people put together that vision statement for the family and go about doing that, because it makes a big difference. Do my kids know our family vision statement? No, not very well, but they know we have one.
But you have one.
Yeah. They know that we are, we have some structure. They know the predictable patterns we have. They know that there are some different family nights we have where one night one kid will cook with Holly, and then the rest of us, all eat together and have fun with it. And we rotate who's doing the cooking. Just goofy things like that they know and they look forward to.
Yep. So. Yep. It's just brilliant and beautiful, man. For us, like when COVID hit last March, and that shutdown was terrifying, obviously, but it threw us into this, like, oh, we need some predictable patterns, because now there's nothing. I love that language you use, predictable patterns. And that was a period of time where we did have more dinner together. We did have these like cool, we did theme nights and dressed up in costumes and random stuff. And it's like, gosh darn it, like here we are a year later and I'm already forgetting, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's the drifting part of like, oh gosh darn it, I'm doing it again, where I'm giving better parts of myself to other areas and not being as consistent there. So this is a helpful conversation even to reframe for me.
Justin, what are you hearing from God right now?
Oh, I literally took a breath, because I think for me, he's always there, right? Like whispering. And I think it goes back to this notion of, my sevenness when I'm, at its unhealth, it's pretty manic in my running and in my speed. And so to get to your question, the whisper of the Spirit really for me is like, hey, it's okay. Like, you're okay. I love you. It's okay to be, the journey of a 7 is to learn how to be content, and which is such a biblical concept too. But I think this contentment of, hey, right now, today is enough. Like, the presence and the practice of awareness for me has been a big journey these last couple of years. And so I think that, in those whispers, he's talking about things like slower, quieter, less distraction, more depth, more, connecting the head and the heart, man. Like, it's more of that. And unfortunately, it's like, cool. All right, next thing, like, what's the next Zoom and what's the next deal? And but in those whispers, and for me, it's in the mornings, but in those whispers, that's where God's kind of doing his reminding. He's not teaching anything new. All his stuff is ancient, right? And it's profound. And so he's whispering those old truths in my spirit when I'm quiet enough to listen.
Yeah. Which sounds like what you need to hear is slow down and
absolutely
you're enough, all those pieces, which is very similar 100%. To what I will get as well at different times.
Yeah, 100%.
Justin, thank you so much for just the conversation and a lot of great stuff around identity. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
So I'm posting daily on LinkedIn. So just Justin Ricklefs. I've got a blog that all the same stuff goes there, but my name.com. And then our company, Guild Content, GUILD content.com is the work stuff. So that's where we're creating a ruckus and making videos and projects and graphics and all sorts of fun things. So yeah, but anywhere in there, feel free to email me or whatever.
What's the quick plug on Guild Content for the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, we're in the tagline is we create content that connects. And so we're an agency based in KC doing a lot of cool work with, telling brand stories. So we're doing video, graphic design, storytelling, social media, content development, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we're fortunate. We got an amazing team of 12, and it's just it's been a blast and a journey to try to figure out, man, how do I lead this group? Looking around, going, hey, there's nobody else here, man. Like, I'm the head of the ship here.
Leadership is lonely at the top, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, thank you very much, Justin. I appreciate just the conversation, the insight you shared.
Likewise. Thanks for having me, man.
I want to thank you for listening to my podcast, Win at Home First. I am so grateful to hear from listeners like you that this content has been helpful. So now I would love for you to pay it forward. I want to get this message in the hands of more listeners. We need leaders to be winning both at home and at work, especially during this time. So please take a minute to share this episode with somebody you think would find value in it, as well as rate and subscribe. As a thank you, please visit my website at corymcarlson.com to download a free resource that people are finding value in. Thank you very much.
This is the podcastfactory.com.